Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us for a special Football Scoop podcast. We're going to take this one straight to the Twitter as well, put it on the website, footballscoop.com. We wanted to come on and talk about this whole Connor Stalions, Michigan scouting debacle, in-person scouting, which is, explicitly not allowed by the NCAA. With the whole thing that's blowing up with him having been uh, within the team access, within the bench area for Central Michigan at Michigan State at their season opener. John Brice and I want to talk about that and see where we go. So after Central Michigan, Jim McElwain played the other night, at his post-game presser, he addressed this. And he said, we're certainly aware of it. We've recently become aware of it. And he certainly didn't have a named credential. He had a credential, but he was not on our list. And to be honest, Jim has to say that. Jim most certainly could not have approved that, because that would be admitting to a serious rules violation. I don't know that everybody knows the team access badges, the credentials, how that works. So, John, I'm going to recap that. Jump in for me if you need to. Before every game, typically, I would say by Friday before a game, if not sooner, operations, director of football operations, or someone in that group of the staff exchanges with the other team a document that is signed by the head coach. So this NCAA bylaws allow up to 50 non-football players within the team area, basically within the bench area. And the head coach has to sign a form every week before the game. And in a conference matchup, that form also gets sent to the conference office. This was a MAC versus a Big Ten. I believe they still send it to their respective conferences. So the head coach has to sign off on it, either the athletic director or his designee. Typically, that's like a sport administrator signs off on that as well. But they are named. So you're allowed up to 50. They are named by individual name. So Central would have filled out that form. What happens is the actual badges, the physical thing, gets sent in advance from Michigan State to Central Michigan. Central Michigan would have had that typically weeks in advance. And then Central Michigan applies their own little names to them. Almost every team that I've spoken with applies names, individual names to them. They certainly would not have written Connor Stalions. They would have been well aware of that. So the list that Central Michigan sent, which Jim McElwain signed, and presumably his athletic director or their designee signed, was transmitted to Michigan State. So Jim can't acknowledge perjuring himself. Jim McElwain has to say, he wasn't on our list, not real sure. We're investigating this. John, in your mind, how long would it take a college football program to investigate how someone got on their sideline?
It shouldn't take very long. As you alluded to, it's a very regimented process, so to speak. I mean, those are things are sent almost exclusively via FedEx or UPS. They're sent in a document pouch that has to be signed for by someone within the athletics department. Then that pouch sits on the desk, whatever desk is right outside the head football coach's office, is the way I've seen it everywhere in numerous programs, whether it's the University of Tennessee or Notre Dame or wherever. That pouch is in control of people within the football program. Now, I think it's fairly common that a lot of the passes don't end up with names written on them. They're passed out to standard sideline people, and then it's up to an individual to put his or her name on them. And I thought it was interesting when Jim McElwain had the chance in his post-game press conference to say, there's no chance that was Connor Stalions. He was never on our sideline. He said, our people are getting to the bottom of this. And I think that's pretty telling. And look, a head coach is worried about a number of things on a Friday night. But unless it's somebody standing in the middle of your team box that you have no recognition of whatsoever, that person is not on your mind. The game is on your mind. But it's weird. The video that's floating around out there appears to show the individual with some smart device glasses on. There are a couple of different types of those through the years. I had a buddy of mine who had some Google Chat glasses or Snapchat glasses that you could record certain amounts of video with. And then Ray-Ban within the past year or so also came out with some smart sunglasses that you could also capture imaging with. So just a really bizarre situation, another wrinkle. And if it's proved by Central Michigan officials or revealed to be beyond a shadow of a doubt Connor Stalions, then it's yet another intricate level of what has proved to be just one of the deepest alleged cheating scandals in all of college sports, maybe all of any sports ever.
I travel a modest amount to some away games, games outside of where I live, and frequently teams will give me sideline passes. It's happened twice this year. Uh, to do that, now I don't get bench access. I've
Right.
been given bench access one time, and that was many, many years ago, in connection with a story we were doing, kind of inside story, and locker room access and all those things. Typically, I get the sideline pass, which is outside the bench area.
Mhm.
Um, in order to get those, you gotta provide a lot of information to the university. Compliance does a lot of checks, and then game day, people are there checking your credentials. Coaches are they're a little nervous. Coaches on the sidelines are looking at, if they don't know who you are, they
Right.
ask an operations guy to come over and talk to you and make sure they understand who you are. If you were within the bench area and they didn't know who you were,
You're not there long. Yeah.
there's no chance.
No.
So, I mean, I'm just going to let y'all know. Central Michigan knew exactly who was there. Jim
Yeah.
McElwain will never say that, but I'm letting you know. Central Michigan knew exactly who was there. Obviously this is a problem for Central Michigan. It's a bigger problem for Michigan.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note, and we laid this out in some of our coverage this week on footballscoop.com, is it's a really short drive from Ann Arbor to Central Michigan. There was a Saturday game, or Ann Arbor to East Lansing, where Michigan State was hosting Central Michigan. That was a Friday evening game because the Big Ten likes playing those Thursday, Friday games, especially earlier in the season when they're ramping things up. And Michigan did not play until Saturday. And Michigan State is Michigan's heated rival. So it continues to be, to me, the depth and the breadth of this situation is what stands out the most. And the more you have this guy showing up in all these images, and it's seemingly a new image by the day that pops up showing Connor Stalions on a sideline somewhere, the more it becomes harder and harder for everyone to say, oh, we don't know who this guy is. Like sidelines, major college football sidelines are incredibly secure areas. And again, over the course of an entire game, they're really secure. You might be able to blend in with the media, as you alluded to, and the photographers, especially if you have a camera or whatever, and you're in that area where other people are shooting the game or photographing the game. But you cannot survive in a team bench area unless everyone knows who you are.
Yeah. John, I want to show this just for one brief second. This is the form that all FBS teams use. This one happens to be the Big Ten's, has got the Big Ten's logo on it, but all of them use the same form without the Big Ten's logo. It's the NCAA mandated form, basically.
Yes.
And you will notice on there that has to be attested to by the head coach and the athletic director or his designee. Down in the bottom middle and bottom right. So this is what we're talking about. This is a big deal. Okay, so Michigan pretty much caught red-handed cheating. It would be pretty easy. They've suspended Connor Stalions. It would be pretty easy for Michigan to investigate this, especially because of the paper trail that's been alluded to by a lot of folks. And and the money. You just follow the money and it's pretty easy. It's pretty easy if you're his employer to say, hey, Connor, come on in. Let's help me understand all this. And somebody outside of football leads that. And pretty quickly, and within 3 hours, you know what you're dealing with. So Michigan's done that, presumably. If they haven't, Ward Manual, what are you doing? So if Ward Manual has not done that already, That would be stunning. Ward Manuel, who I want to quickly reference, he's one of the representatives on the College Football Playoff Committee. The College Football Playoff Committee just Tuesday night made their first announcement of their rankings, and I believe it was Boo Kerrigan, who is their spokesman. Boo says, "Hey, listen, this whole potential thing with Michigan, that's not an issue for us. That's an issue for the NCAA." And the NCAA, as we all know, deals with things a year, 2 years, 3 years down the road. So that sounds like a talking point from Ward. I'm looking for your perspective on that, John.
Yeah, I heard that. And Boo Corrigan, the NC State AD, making those comments coming out of the initial rankings on Tuesday evening. And I heard that comment and said, okay, that's certainly one perspective. And I guarantee you've heard the same in the 36 hours since then, going on 48 hours since then. What I overwhelmingly hear from coaches and people in the industry that are putting their bodies on the line, if it's players, or their livelihoods on the line as coaches, is that, yeah, you can take that approach, but you're looking at their body of work and saying, yeah, they got to 8-0 and they're the most dominant team out there, or one of the most dominant teams out there, but you're not factoring how did they get that dominance. That's what coaches want. If there's all this seeming evidence to show that they have cheated to become that dominant. That's not opinion. That's what continues to mount every single day. You've had a minimum of 12 different Big Ten schools indicate that Connor Stalions or some representative thereof tried to buy tickets and presumably film their signals within their home stadiums. Again, teams that Michigan would be playing or conceivably could be playing for the Big Ten championship. Beyond that, Scott, we know we've both been told, I know I've been adamantly told that Connor Stalions worked to scout SEC teams, specifically Tennessee and Georgia, and took at things even beyond the level of merely scouting those teams to try and determine their signals. So I think that's what people are frustrated with. Yes, that was the comments from the College Football Playoff Committee spokesperson, Boo Corrigan, the other night, who's sort of the voice of that entity this year. But you cannot separate the two. You cannot say, we're not looking at that. We're looking at what Michigan's done on the field. This is not about what Michigan has done on the field. It's how Michigan has done that on the field. And you made the point. The NCAA, and I would remind, the NCAA is not like the man behind the curtain in The Wizard of Oz. The NCAA is made up of its constituents and its body of people that form those committees that then probe these things. But it makes glaciers look fast in movement. So the Big Ten can step in. Michigan can step in. Michigan stepped in this year to begin the year and said, we're going to support Jim Harbaugh serving this voluntary 3-game suspension. Only after the NCAA said, no, 4 games is not enough. We're going to continue our process into the alleged recruiting violations that took place during the COVID-19 pandemic, when everyone was for the most part adhering to the recruiting dead periods, except for maybe Michigan, and we know Tennessee was not. So that's to me the big issue. You can't talk about, we're not looking at that as a factor. We're looking at how dominant they've been on the factor. They're completely interconnected elements.
So the NCAA, as you said, nobody has confidence the NCAA will get in there and take action, within the season. Literally not a human I've spoken with. The NCAA might have some investigators in there trying to do some legwork and things like that, but actually taking action, no shot. So Michigan could take action. The Big Ten theoretically could take action. And so that's what other coaches are calling for. They're saying, hey, listen, this is step back and look. 3 years ago, Michigan was pretty darn bad. And all of a sudden, Michigan's become pretty darn good. And then you got video that the teams have the sideline video. They got way more than has been released to the public of Connor Stalions standing there literally whispering in the ear, yelling in the ear of the coordinators. And Jim's paying attention to him.
Or is he communicating via other means on the sidelines? We don't know that either. I think that's what a lot of people are waiting to see if it's unearthed in this investigation. Is we know he was on the sidelines. We know he was talking to coaches. Was he only talking person to person to coaches, or was there another method in which he was communicating?
All right. So what happens, John? In your opinion, what happens? And how does this impact Jim Harbaugh's legacy?
Yeah, when he tried to skirt that question earlier this week, and I give a lot of credit to those Michigan reporters who were told point blank as the press conference started, we're going to talk about Purdue. There's a lot of things we can't answer. They ask about his contract and whether or not an extension had been rescinded. They ask about his legacy. They ask about all of this. So I give those Michigan reporters a tremendous amount of credit for the way they handled that. It has to tarnish his legacy. It has to impact his legacy. He's not being accused of this in years that he was going 9-3 or 10-2 and losing to their two biggest rivals, or losing to South Carolina in a bowl game or Florida in a bowl game or whomever. This is coming amidst not only his personal greatest success atop the Michigan program, but the most success Michigan's had since Lloyd Carr was there in 1997. So it's impossible right now to separate the two. And with every image unearthed that shows Connor Stalions on a Michigan sideline in prominent placement, be it somewhere near Harbaugh or near Mentor, the defensive coordinator, or whomever, it just further casts shadows on the legacy of Jim Harbaugh. Scott, your thoughts?
Well, there's no doubt in my mind this has tainted Jim, really, and that upsets Jim greatly. Jim believes he's at another, untouchable level, and the rest of the world doesn't see that, and that's going to upset Jim in a big way. And I don't know if Jim doubles down and says, I'm in Michigan the rest of my life, and I'm going to prove this was not who I am," or if Jim says, "I'm tired of this, I'm going back to the league," and tries to get an NFL job like he has in the past, and it just hadn't worked out. Some of the things I find comical are, there's all these leaks from various people, Michigan. Oh, they're going to sign him to a new deal any day now. Well, they could have signed him to a new deal any day for the last 3 months, last 3 years. They could have done that at any point. And now Santa Ono's coming out saying, so much faith in Jim, and, get a new deal done. Okay, well, that's interesting and all. And the Michigan guys are like, well, they would never sign him to a new deal if he really did anything wrong. Well, that's just not the case. What the potential issue is here in the holdup, the reason why they haven't announced an extension already, is Jim objecting to the for cause language. So it's a big, big deal. And I say a big deal. I mean, you're talking about $50 million, $100 million deal on the table. If Michigan can terminate him for cause for what his staff did, and goodness, if there's any indication that Jim knew about this, they can fire him for cause right now. That's $50 million, $100 million. I mean, think Mel Tucker's losing what, $70, $80 million?
Yeah.
Jim's about to lose the same amount of money if they can pin this on Jim. So the extension means absolutely nothing. It's the language that they can trip him up for cause. And that's what Jim is likely objecting to. And that's why they haven't done a deal yet.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that it's been leaked out there that they wanted, especially before this blew up, that they intended to sign him and make him the highest paid coach in college football. Well, if that's the case, then you're talking a minimum of $12 million per year, where the market is right now. He would have to go to 12 plus million per year. So even a 5-year deal, you're talking a 60 plus million in value. So I just want to put in perspective the dollars at play there, because we already know there are a handful of coaches, Dabo Swinney, Nick Saban, Kirby Smart's right in there, that are at or over the 11 million mark. So to make him the highest paid, which apparently was an objective at some point in these negotiations for his side, their side, I'm not sure, all sides, but that would at least have to be a minimum of 12 million per. So that's very, I think, telling, just the scope of the money on the line here with exactly what's going on. And for cause language, let's also make clear, that's in every single coaching contract that's in coaching contracts at the NFL, not just the collegiate level, but everyone has that.
The NFLs are fully guaranteed. It's different. There's all sorts of cause languages to why they can fire him. But in the NFL, it's still guaranteed money. It's just a different animal. That's a league. You're dealing with state law here in the Michigan. It's different stuff.
But in the NFL, they have some behavioral clauses or things that could void a contract that's similar to the college level. Yes, they're fully guaranteed, but you do have some behavioral clauses, like if you cause immense embarrassment to the organization or something like that.
And that is where Michigan State and Mel Tucker is, to be honest. That's what tripped him up there. Yeah, this impacts Jim Harbaugh's legacy. I just don't see any possible way it doesn't. Jim it has to say, just like Jim McElwain had to say he did not know Connor Stalions on sideline, Jim Harbaugh has to say he had no personal knowledge of this Connor Stalions, the level to which he was going, and all those things. The fascinating thing is, how does no one have Connor Stalions on record, speaking yet? Um, if Michigan has not interviewed him multiple times, and I mean the University of, or more likely than not, they'll use outside counsel so they can keep it um, outside the public domain. So Michigan has probably hired outside counsel. Outside counsel will come in and speak with him on the university's behalf, and then it goes behind the wall of the law firms, and it could take a long time to play out.
Yeah, and one thing I want to note to your point about surely Michigan has spoken to him right now. There are a couple of things, and surely there would be record of it. You referenced sideline video. It's much like the replay booth. The replay booth has angles of the field that we never see. There's sideline. Here's the other thing I would note. Almost every single facility out there now, especially one like the University of Michigan, you're either going to have a card that lets you swipe into the building. Some of them now have added the fingerprint scanner, and some of them have a digital code. But there would be a record of Connor Stalions going in and out of those buildings all the time. There's typically security video in these state-of-the-art $100 million football offices, facilities. I can't imagine that if there was truly nothing to this, Michigan wouldn't just say, look, here's our video evidence. Here's all of our security footage from inside the Schembechler Center. There's nobody talks to Connor Stalions. This guy's sitting off by himself. They've not done that because they cannot do that. And I think that is incredibly significant. The other thing I would note is, though, he does have a military background, so there's some respect involved there. But there's also no compulsion. They can't legally force him to testify. He's going to lose his job regardless. And if he's that devoted to Michigan, he could just say, I'm not talking. He's cooked either way.
Yeah. Nearly every Power Five team that I am aware of films their own sideline. So that film exists.
Right.
Michigan has access to that. The public does not. But there's a lot of video out there. And if Ward Manuel really wanted to understand what's going on, if he didn't already know, Ward could get to the bottom of this pretty quickly. It's just, does he want to? Yeah. There's a lot of money on the line with a potential national championship. And Michigan's teams look like a juggernaut thus far. They've played absolutely no one. I get that. Literally no one. I get it. But they got a couple of tests coming up, and then obviously Ohio State at the end, and then Big Ten championship, and then playoffs. So I don't see anything. I don't see anyone stepping in. I don't see the Big Ten commissioner stepping in and stopping this. It's too valuable to the Big Ten commissioner, to be honest.
Yeah, well, but overwhelmingly, the coaches are you going to put the health of one program over the entire conference? And that's the message that I hear. And that's the message from Big Ten assistants that I've spoken with to ACC to beyond. There's such a perception that Michigan cheated the game. And I think that's where this stands. And that's why I think the Big Ten irrevocably damages itself if it doesn't intervene here. I'll just leave it at that.
I will tell you, last week, not so much this week, I don't think anybody's shocked by anything else that's coming out. Last week, I got texts from head coaches all across the country saying, there's no way Jim survives this in Michigan, right? So, I mean, that's the level of disappointment, disgrace that these other coaches feel for Jim. Like, this is really bad in their eyes. This is integrity of the game stuff.
Yep.
This is also how people get hurt. I mean, to your point, when you know what play is coming and you can call up the perfect defense, the perfect blitz, you can get people hurt. Careers can end.
Yeah. I'm mediocre at blackjack and terrible at poker, and I can do pretty darn well at both if I know exactly what card's coming next.
Well said. He's John D. Brice, one on Twitter. I'm Football Scoop. I appreciate everybody's time today. We will continue to cover this. We do expect more to play out in the next 10 days. I was told as early as this morning, there are some investigators on campus looking into financial records. And guys I spoke to said, Scott, if there really are, if this went through the business office at University of Michigan, that's how this gets become a huge problem for Michigan. And the guys I'm speaking with are in disbelief that that's even a possibility, that they didn't just pay cash
Right.
or pay him on the side outside of the business office. If it went through the business office, this is lights out for a lot of people.
Yeah, takes everybody down. Yeah, you're right.
Yep.
All
All right, my brother. We'll stay on top of everything on footballscoop.com. Thanks, everybody.